Hi, this is Francis, creator of Gnome. It's a game that I entered into the 2022 54 card game contest. I kind of wanted just to talk about the inspiration behind Gnome, how the art was developed, and kind of the whole workflow of that because I've had a number of people comment on that. And I'd also like to take this time too to show you how the art was generated. A lot of people don't realize that this art was done by artificial intelligence. So we'll take a look at that. In fact, I'm going to do a demonstration of creating an art piece. And we're going to start out with that first because while I explain Gnome and how it works, I will also will have that art piece being generated in the background, so we'll be able to go back and take a look at it after we're done taking a look at the Gnome game. Gnome is a 54 card game, and it was developed probably in the course of a couple weeks. Actually, probably a little bit more time than that because this is actually a point 0.2 version of Red Rum, another game that I entered in the contest and pulled out so that I could enter Gnome, just because it was Gnome is less abstract and it had a little bit more game in it. Felt than Red Rum, and Red Rum really is. There was a hidden message behind it, and just to kind of briefly go through that with you, if you haven't read any of the posts, it was about Red Rum is about inspiration and where inspiration comes from, and a lot of people aren't aware of that. We have, I hear and read about studies in subconscious and how our subconscious works, but in reality, it doesn't work any way like that. We have autonomous systems that work in our body, like our heart. And we don't think about our heart beating, but it beats. We also have this segmentation of our mind that is segmented from our thinking, our mental processes, our mathematical, analytical mind. We also have this creative mind that's running autonomously in the background. And it doesn't need trained. It's taking in everything that's happening around us. And if we're working on a subject, for instance, let's put this in a concrete setting so you can understand it. If we're working on a problem and we're consuming a lot of information, that autonomous process of our mind is getting fed all of that information, and it's not something that we need to train. It is another autonomous function of our body, and it's thinking about it and dealing with it by itself, kind of like a dream state. We don't control our dreams, they just happen, and we get a glimpse of that. This part of our mind is working in the background, and it takes a couple of days for it to work. So as we're working and we're consuming information, we're trying to tackle a problem, that part of our mind is doing it while we're analytically working on something else and thinking about something else entirely, maybe even doing something else entirely. That's actually better for it because it's not hindered. It's working on something else. That's why when you're working really hard on something and you can put it away and you're doing something else, and all of a sudden all these images and things start popping in your mind. That's that part of your brain communicating with your analytical part. Red Rum was about how to talk back and forth between these two systems. And it's very real. I mean, I'm not a scientist. I can't go into the processes that are happening there, or the associating that with any of the current research on subconscious. Just try it yourself and see that it works. Work on something, consume a book, and put it away, and see what floods into your mind 2 or 3 days later. It usually takes about 2 or 3 days before you start getting some of that feedback. Now, if you have ADHD, those are super people. That's actually a gift, because a lot of times you'll get that information, that feedback in almost instantaneously. And I don't think there's enough research in the capabilities there, but everybody can do amazing things with creativity. They understand the workflow. And that's kind of the reason why, too, you'll see a lot of my odd posts. That's part of that workflow. Sometimes you're working on different aspects of that creative process, and they all play on each other. And take, for instance, the one card that has the directions on how to play Gnome. It's kind of a pictograph. But the thing about it is that I really didn't understand this game until I was putting this together, because it's symbols and signs, and I'm trying to figure out how to condense it. And that analytical part of my mind went away. And there were things that were broken in the game that were fixed because I created this card. But let's go into artificial intelligence, because, where did all this art come from? I'm not an artist. I'm a computer programmer. And this is, there's a really amazing tool that everybody has access to. I'm going to put links in the description. And there are better videos on explaining this, but I'm going to kind of give it from a 10,000 foot view of how this AI art works. And we're going to generate a piece and have this piece go into the, working in the background while I explain how Gnome works. We'll play a little bit of it, and then we'll go back and see how that art piece looks. And I think you'll be amazed. Just let's show off my artistic talent. Oh, by the way, this is a gnome. In the Northwest, Pacific Northwest, these are gnomes. You'll often see them with little baubles and glowy bits. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take, because gnomes like to come out at night, we're going to put a night backdrop in there. And I'm using GIMP, by the way, which is a free program. And we're going to put in maybe some dark bits of grass here at the bottom. This is a very bad Bob Ross impression. And now we're going to maybe draw some trees in the background. Lower that in. I'm going to get out a little. These 53s were great. I don't know why they don't do anything with these anymore. These and I don't have an Apple computer, but I do use the Apple trackpad with my computer, and man, it's really cool. So we've got a little bit of a tree there started, but we're going to put the tree there, just as Bob Ross said. We're going to make a tree live right here. Maybe there's a little branch. Of course, that's going to be covered up. And maybe give it a little bit more. I'll try not to take too much more time on this, but I just want you to see something. See what happens with this. We'll just do that one tree, and then what we're going to do, maybe lighten it up a little bit. Yeah, give it a little bit of light. Man, you know what I forgot to do? I'm going to turn off my phone, because if I don't, I usually get about 1 million phone calls. Okay. All right. So then we've got that. Next thing, let's work on her. Let's work on her dress. We're gonna make her dress green, like a really dark green, maybe. We're gonna make a little, you know, a lot of gnomes I've made so far were guys. We need to make a girl gnome. I think traditionally, you know, if you get gnomes for the garden, right there. I have opacity on. I want full. Oh, do you see how fat this the size of the brush is? I'm not working in detail here at all. In fact, you can't even tell what I'm doing. It looks like just a blob. The next thing that I'm going to do is let's add the face. Let's go into like the let's try to find. There we go. And this is at night, so you know these colors don't really need to be. We're just looking for differences in shades of color, because that's all the AI engine is going to recognize. So we have their face. This is her face. Give her a little bit of chin there. And I think maybe that'll be a neckline. I really messed that up. Let's give a little bit of the neckline. Here's her face. I'll try to round out these features here a little bit. Man, this is really bad. But I think this is going to demonstrate the fact that you can tell right away that I am not an artist, and I don't pretend to be. But that means that anybody else can do it, right? Man, I am getting Bob Rossi, aren't I? So let's go back to this color, and let's lighten it up just a little bit so we can put some detail there. And I need to lower my brush a little bit. It might help if I, since I'm in the face, that I blow this up a little bit. Let's get some contour here. Yeah. Man, you should see by now that this is hideous. But that's okay. The more hideous this is, the more amazing you're gonna be when you see what happens to it. So we got a little bit of her defining of her chin there. Let's give her some blue eyes. Something about the Google excuse me, the AI engine here is the fact that when it's moving, how it works is you feed it information about what's in the picture. And what it does is it processes every, I'm giving you the really broad view of this. It's processing chunks of this at a time. Based off of your criteria that you say that's in this image, it looks at each quadrant and then grades it on how well does it fit your description. So that's all we're doing is kind of giving it a really fuzzy, bad vision of what we're actually wanting. We're gonna give her some blue eyes, and I think the reason why I brought that out is because you won't hear this probably anywhere else. I honestly, I had a hard time finding any information about this stuff at all, but you want to give it one dominant eye because the eyes drift around. So we're going to give her one dominant eye. Okay. It's going to be a bit bigger than the other eye. Well, I could have at least put it in straight, but maybe she's turned a little bit. we're going to leave it because, this is kind of all part of the process. Let's go back to that one color, the lighter color. Maybe we'll make this a little bit smaller, accent the nose. Okay. I'm going to give her, man, she needs some ruby red lips, right? Okay. And now for the last bit of this process, let's, man, you know what? She needs a hat that matches. She needs a hat that matches her eyes. Gnomes have big pointy hats, right? That part we know. Man, that's a big old pointy hat. Looks very gnomey. You can't miss that. This is at night. The moonlight's probably going. Let's give it. We'll help. We do need to help it out a little bit. So let's lighten this up a little bit. Maybe with a light flow here. We're kind of doing that. We're gonna. I promise you. I know. Especially if you're an artist, this is very painful to watch, and I appreciate that. I'm sorry to make you do this, but that's what's going to make this process even more fantastic when we get there, right? Okay, she's been working out. Let's thin her out. Okay, I mean, she's been hiking in the forest. You know what? Maybe she needs some arms. This is like building a really bad snowman. But we got, tough of arm here. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe another arm. Maybe maybe that needs to be a little bit darker. There we go. Oh, let's make this a blonde gnome. So let's give her some blonde hair. Might not be bright enough, but there we go. And I'm really going to zoom in on that. And then that's too big of a brush, going the wrong direction. Let's have bits of hair going here, and maybe it's just going every which way. She is working in the forest. We'll give her let's lighten this down a little bit. Give it a little bit of all right. So we got our gnome. Say hi. That's our gnome. We're gonna save her. I mean, that's pretty bad. If you were to, so we're gonna call this a girl gnome in the forest. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go back to our program here, and we're going to upload. Oh, there she is, our girl gnome in the forest. We've uploaded her, and we're going to click on here. We're going to copy her path because we are going to start with the initial image. There, under do the run, there is something that's called initial image. That's what we're going to start with. We're going to start with her. This is where the magic happens. The text is everything. As I was telling you, there's different quadrants of the image, and it's graded. And as it's going through the grading process, it's being refined by artificial intelligence. So let's just start with, this is a portrait. I use the word portrait because I want to try to explode the face up. Otherwise, it might seem a little bit more distant. A portrait of a gnome, blonde gnome girl in the forest. So what's important about this is the description should match the elements that you want to portray in the image. Even if the description seems a little bit minute, what you've entered into the image might be translated by, this is artificial intelligence. It's not, the smartest thing in the world. So let's, the portrait of a blonde gnome girl in the forest at night. And we're going to now talk about the medium that we're going to use. We're going to say this is on oil canvas. Now, I'm giving you all the secret sauce, so you can generate the exact same art that I used for this game using this. On oil canvas by Norman Rockwell. What's the beautiful thing about this is that there's a lot of artists that are already trained in this image. And there's a link down here at the bottom. And if you go to that link, you'll be able to see all the different artists that this engine has. And this isn't all of them. There are some here, this engine has been trained. For instance, if we were to type in Monet, it looks like Monet's work, even though it's the style. The medium means a lot. You can kind of play around with the medium, like we're going to do oil canvas. And the reason we're going to do oil canvas is that I want a nice, clear definition of things. So by Norman Rockwell, and we're going to enter in another part of the secret sauce. Alphonse Mucha. Even though you're looking at an artist that works a lot in flat space, color, whimsical, we're going to grab that whimsical, that whimsical look here. But he also, you'll notice that he plays a lot with lights. And gnomes, even though they can see really well in the dark, they like baubles. They like lights. So we're at a portrait of a blonde gnome girl in the forest at night on oil canvas by Norman Rockwell and Alphonse Mucha. We're going to mesh those two artists together. And then I'm going to say Unreal Engine. Now there's a pipe symbol here, and it means that I want you to think about all that, but I want you to add this filter Unreal Engine in there. What it will do is it will help maybe take some of those aspects and kind of generate a little bit more light effects, and also give it that almost synthetic realism that's going on. So we've done all that. If we go up here, you'll notice that in the display rate, I put 3 in there. I want to see every third image that it creates, because eyes drift around, the mouth drifts around, images drift around. What you end up having to do is take several of the photographs, put them in layers, and then merge those, just the bits that you like, into the final photograph. We won't have time to look into that, but I think what you will see is pretty amazing. We're going to go ahead and hit the run. We're going to make sure it is running. And then after we know that this hasn't bombed out, we'll go and take a look at. I'll give you a playthrough of Gnome. Okay, so we're in good shape. This is the grading scale. And what it's doing is it's taking a look at each of the parts of this and it's grading it until it actually does something with it. Man, be interesting. Well, we're going to let it think about what it's done here, and we'll go to Gnome. This is Gnome. What I really liked about Red Rum was I wanted to demonstrate a game that worked on. I wanted to get it out of the analytical space and offer a variety of. I, man, I think this is a throwback of what we've been through the last couple of years with the pandemic. Especially if you have kids. And your kids have had to homeschool. Yeah, I think that what we've noticed right away was the fact that if they're lacking, if you notice they're not doing very good academically, it's because they're not having a variety of different stimulus. And when you're dealing with the creativity, you have to work on it from a variety of different angles. It's the reason why I create the prose that I do in there. It isn't. It's mainly for me, because when I write the prose, maybe something comes to light, or maybe something comes more concrete after it's in that medium, and then it works itself into the game, and then it does a full circle. And I think with the creative process, it really stands to light for our kids too. If our kids are suffering academically, especially after these last couple of years, it's because they need a variety of different stimulus. Man, that is why board gaming is very important, because you're having a game, but it's tactical, and it's encompassing the whole part of development, as opposed to the worst thing that the kids can do is be locked in front of a computer or a video game or VR. That is looking pretty scary, because you need that variety of experience. You need that variety of stimulus in order to create, be creative. And it's, I was talking about that part of your brain that's taking in everything and thinking about it for a couple days and then communicating. It's really important what we feed it, because we get it back what we feed. And so what we're shaping our experience today, what we're feeding ourselves, the problems that we're working on, what we're trying to solve, we have to be careful what we take in, because it can really disrupt or hinder that creative side. How do I get on that? I don't know. But anyway, Gnome, like Red Rum, has a map that is created with the cards. And but instead of being abstract, there is actually it less abstract. What we've got going on here is that during the day we have forests being created, we have meadows being created, mountains and rivers, and that builds out the area that will be played on. And then during the day, you're building buildings on the different places those buildings can be. Like, for instance, if you have a water mill, it's got to be built on a river. And then you use the buildings to create crafts, and gather resources to get points for the scoring the game. During the during that process, the players also are moving around their gnome on the board, and it's the linear. It works on lines. So, for instance, let me just take this out here. This is wheat. Let's take a look at this. With wheat, you have a gnome. He's got to be on the same row as a field, and he's got to be on the same row as a mill because the wheat is stored in the mill. So if you can think of it, and the row can only be 4 cards long. So as the players are putting out the rows, they can only be 4 cards. So let me just go ahead and get this started. So what you'll do is you'll sit here. You can play this 1 player or 2 player. The game can play up to 4 players. There aren't very many turns in this game. So what you're setting up in this game to happen has to happen fairly quickly, or you have to set up the game kind of like Brass or Hands Teutonica, some of my favorites. You're having to set up your ecosystem and then work from that. And that's really what this game kind of is about too. So we're going to click on New Game. What's happened is that it's dealt us 5 cards. What happened here? Oh, I might have broke something. I guess I did break something. Okay, so you're gonna take the cards there. We're gonna put them here. I'll have to figure out why that's broken later. And you're gonna start with a council. So you randomly get a gnome. All the players randomly get a gnome, and the rest of them are the council. And there are 1 more day than there are cards, because you can think of it, to get through the first day, we're going to flip over this card, and now that craft is available to craft. Once all the gnomes are flipped over and you end the last day, the game ends. Also, if you run out of cards on the deck, the game also ends. So our first gnome is, in order to do that craft, it's going to have 5 metal. So we know that that's going to be available soon. And then 2, we have to look at our resources. What do we have here? We have wheat and metal. In order to have metal, we have to have a mine, and we have to have a workshop. Wheat, we have to have that mill and a wheat field. We have a meadow and a mountain. So a meadow actually is where you can, of course, this one raises sheep, as we can see the other side of the card. This is something else that you can do here. You can change the cards from night and day. It doesn't do anything functionally for the game. It just turns over the cards. If you'll notice in this section of the card, it'll tell you what's on the other side. Like this card is a forest, but there's a workshop on the other side. This is one of the most important cards of the game. There's only 4 of them too. What's interesting about these cards, like I said, this is like for instance, we'll go ahead and go through the first turn. So the very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put down a meadow, and every time I put down a card, I put my gnome on it. That's because that's physically where my gnome is in the game. Every time I put down a card, that's where it's at. Now I've used up that card. I was talking about the fact that, I've got this mountain, I got these things, but, because I'm on a single player game, I'm going to discard these cards so that I can fill my hand up to, I want to make sure that I get a good selection of cards. So I've placed, if we look at what we can do during the evening, at the top of the card, I can place 1 card to put a gnome on it. I can move my gnome by discarding cards, and then I can gather resources or craft, and then fill my hand. Well, I filled my hand. That's the end of my that round, so I'm going to click on next round. And this is filled up. At least that part works. So I just got more resources. I didn't get a whole lot more cards, but I got the important cards that I needed. That workshop is super important. What were we on again? We were on a sheep pasture. That needs a house. Do I have a house? No, those are both workshops. We'll go ahead and put a mountain out here. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that when you're playing with multiple players, the mountains and the rivers are blockers. Gnomes can't move on mountains and they can't move on rivers. But when you first place it, you put your gnome on top of it. It can go either direction, but your gnome always goes where you place your card. That's the main way that your gnome moves around the board, by placing cards. Then if you decide that you want to move a gnome after you've placed it somewhere that you want it, or maybe you haven't moved it at all, maybe it's in a strategic spot and you need to just move your gnome, that's where you discard cards, and you can move that gnome as many cards as there are cards that you discard. So in any case, our gnome is going there on the mountain. And that's the end of that day. I got mountain. Although I don't have any wool, and I don't have any metal. So I'm just going to go ahead and dump these because I want some new cards. And 2 workshops. I didn't need 2 workshops. Well, but I don't have a forest yet. And see, I have to be able to put a workshop. A workshop requires a forest. So I'm going to go ahead and keep both of these. So we're going to go ahead and click the next round. Now we're on daytime. I'll click on day. We'll flip these over. I can build a workshop. I don't have any forest. The houses require forest. I don't have any. That's a shame. But what I can do is I am going to put both of these here because like I said, I don't have any forest and I need both of these. So I might need to keep these because I'm the only player. There's no one else that's going to put out a forest. And so I'll need to keep those forests. So that means it might be well into the next day before I'll even be able to build a house or build a workshop, which I need both to collect resources with. And metal, there's nothing I can do with it right now. I'm going to have to drop it. If you notice that gnomes work better at night, so you get an extra, all the cards are doubled. If I collect the resources, they're double at night than they are during the day. I can't build anything on a meadow, and I can't build anything on the mountain. I don't want to get rid of any of these cards. So that's the end of my round. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the next round. There's a road. This is interesting. This road... Oh, but this is probably one of the most powerful cards of the game. It's not what's here. This is cool. This is a tribute card, meaning if you build a road or a bridge, you get a tribute, meaning that you get to take one of the resources from someone else's hands and put it in your storehouse directly without having anything else. You'll be able to, if it was ore, you wouldn't have to have a mine or anything. It would go straight to your reef. So those tributes are really great. But what's on the other side of this is the reclaimed. What this forest can do is it can actually transform. There's only a card like this in the game. It can transform any card into a forest, even if a building is there. So do I want to get rid of any of these cards? And this is great for multiplayer. I'm going to have to get rid of it. So we're decisions, right? And my gnome is staying there. No, because I discarded one, I could move my gnome here if I wanted to, but I couldn't move back because now that mountain is blocking. I really don't need to. There aren't any other cards on here, but you'll notice where that's important. And you might notice too why strategically you might place a mountain somewhere to block. You see a certain player is hoarding a specific resource, and they're getting ready to go off on it. You might put that mountain in a place that will prevent them from gathering that resource. So we're going to go ahead and go to the next. We can't go to the next round because we're at the end of the day. Of course, it did give me a card, but we're going to go to the next day. And now we're on the nighttime. And remember, I have all of this forest. We're placing forest at night. And this is where you want to be really careful. If I placed both of my workshops, I could only build houses on the next round. I want a house and a workshop. So you have to be really careful about what you're putting down. Also, you have to be really aware of the fact that there are only 4 workshops in the game. If they've been spoiled by another player by being placed, because when these cards go on the desktop, they're there until the end of the game. You can't change them. So if all the workshops are out, you don't have a workshop. So you know that you're not, unless it's a tribute, you're not collecting things that need a workshop. You might as well start working on the wool and wheat, because it isn't going to happen during this game. Points are really hard to come by, especially in multiplayer. And you know, if you're in a 4-player game, you only have 2 cards out because the other 4 cards players have. That means that you're only playing 3 days, meaning you only have 12 rounds to play, but a lot happens in those 12 rounds. So in the game, the more people that play, the quicker that the game goes. A 2-player game can go up, 30 minutes or more. A 4-player game can go, it depends. It's about a 30-minute game. So I did add the forest. I'm moving my gnome there because I added that there. And I'm going to go ahead and dump the wool, and I'm going to go to the next round. Got more wool. I've got a meadow here, but like I said, I want a house. That meadow is, but the thing about that is that I could put... What was this? This is going to be the workshop for the mine. What else needs a workshop? Wood. How much wood could a woodchuck chuck? This is a sheep farm. Wool needs a house. So I'm going to go ahead and put up the forest here. I have wool, so why don't I just keep it? I'm going to put a forest here because I can build this house on it. And I'll also want to build this workshop because and a mine that I don't have yet. I can also plant this wheat field here, and then maybe do a mill here for the wheat, because I can only have 4 cards per line. So that's the end of my day. I'll go ahead. I think I'd like to keep the rest of my cards here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the next round. I had created that forest, that secondary forest, so I needed to have moved my gnome on it. Um, I probably would have liked playing pieces, but um, this is a 54 card game contest. There aren't any playing pieces allowed. But at the same time, when you're working with multiple people or you're playing a game with everybody or multiple players, this gnome, your gnome blocks anybody from using that space anyway. So having the card on there really isn't a hindrance, and people kind of remember what's there. If not, you can always move the card. I almost suggest if you're doing this on tabletop that you give a little bit of spaces between the cards so that they can be picked up. You can pick and place your gnomes. Okay, I got another meadow. That's a wheat field. Wheat field. I don't need 2 wheat fields. So I'm going to dump one. Do I have... I don't have any sheep yet. You know what? Let me, I'm looking at, I can go ahead and flip these to days so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to put a wheat field here. I can plant the wheat because this meets the criteria. If you look in the bottom left-hand corner, it tells you what it is. It's a meadow, and this needs to be placed on a meadow. So I just place that there. And then I move my gnome on it. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this because I thought that was I was getting my mind set on a pasture, and then we're going to go ahead and go to the next round. Oh, and there's the card that I needed for the wool. And now I don't have a meadow. Do I have another meadow? No, those are all forests. It's okay. Because this is a mountain, I've got to build a workshop here. Because if you're going to collect metal, do I have any metal pieces? I think those got 8. When you're at the beginning of each day, oh, and this is something else I forgot to do, and something I couldn't program this to do. At the end of when you hit the next day, you flip over this. So now this is available to craft. But also, all of your discards get put to the bottom of the pile. So I created this workshop. I'm moving my gnome on it. There isn't anything else that I can do at the moment. You can generate this axe by having enough metal in your hand and your store. Keep in mind, your store is really important because that's what you're going to use to score the game. And in order to score it, you have to collect it to put it in that storehouse. Like, for instance, this wool. I have to have a sheep pasture and a house somewhere in the line, unobstructed. Like, for instance, if you looked at this, you'll see an example of that here. I can't point to that with the mouse because the card goes away. But if you look under the blocks area, you'll see where the example here is we're collecting wood. And you need your gnome, your forest, and a workshop all in one line. If a mountain happens to be between it, the workshop and that forest, you can't use it. But there happens to be another forest underneath that gnome. And so even though your gnome is on that workshop, it can still collect the forest because it has access to that forest unblocked. And what else blocks trolls and cats? Mountains, rivers, and other players also block your ability to gather. So I've moved it there. I still, we're well into the 3rd day, and I still haven't created any resources yet. But I can, I did place the wheat field, so I have to move my gnome there, and I'm not going to give up. I do have a pasture Not a real high wheat card. Oh, but there's the watermill. Let me just dump this. I can dump the workshop. I can find another forest, probably. There are 9 forests. You can see that under the night side. It tells you how many are of each of the cards. So I'm going to go ahead and move I've discarded, I've placed it, so I'm going to go to the next round. Oh, again, I got to click this day to go up there, and I'm clicking over another card. Notice all my discards went to the bottom. Got some metal coming up. And what do we have here? Ooh, I have a mine. I'm going to build that mine, move my gnome on it. I have no place for that. About 2 things for pastures. The reason why I wouldn't want to throw one of those away is because now I've got a meadow card. I can put down a meadow card, and then when these flip over, I'll have to put the pasture on it. I need the house to go with the sheep. So this is the house, this is the sheep. And then also I need a river eventually. But we have an open workshop, and now we have a mine, and we have metal coming up. So I'll demonstrate that. I'm not going to play through the whole game. It wasn't my intention. Oh, by the way, this is nighttime. And I probably just did that wrong. I couldn't place that mine because this is nighttime, and I didn't flip these things over. So I can't place that. That mine yet until day 3. And so I'll have to keep that. Again, I have that river card, the mill card. We're going to try to think about this as a house. So I'm going to put this here. Excuse me, not as a house. We're going to think about this as a house. I'm going to put that house card there. And this meadow, I'm going to put sheep, because that sheep have to have a house in order to collect the wool. And 2, if you were going to create the yarn, which gives you 8 points, you'll have to be in there with the house. So we're going to the next round because I don't want to lose anything. That's metal. What I'm going to want to do now, I'm going to go ahead and put the river here just because I'm hoping I'm going to get another water mill, and I can use that to produce the wheat. And then maybe what I'll need to do, I have a workshop. A mill doesn't use a workshop. I'll put this here. That way, if I can put another workshop here, what is this? Excuse me, if I can put like another forest here, I can use that workshop to collect wood. And here's the thing about it. Let's say that I have a forest here. I'm going to use a house here for that. But let's say this is forest here. In order to collect wood, I have to have this. If your gnome is here, and your mine was there, and you had a handful of metal and maybe 1 wood, you'd be able to take in that same turn, because your gnome is there, you'd be able to take all of those and throw them into your storehouse, because you can collect multiple things. And that's towards the end of the game, it's like that. You're really setting yourself up, or trying to jimmy your way into a situation where you're collecting more than one resource at a time, and things just start escalating from there. I moved some cards where they shouldn't have been, but like I said, I wasn't trying to play this the whole way through it. There is one thing that I didn't show. There is a troll card. It only gets placed at night, and a troll only moves at night. But how it works is if a player does put it out, it moves to the last building used, and it acts as a block card there. If there happens to be a gnome on that spot, it gets that gnome has to go back to the player's hand and has to be placed by putting down another card. But also, in order to first put the troll out, there has to be a bridge. And there, this is a strategic card that some people may want to be using, even though it seems like it might hinder you. You actually might have, for instance, the royal gnomes. You might actually have the cake, and if you happen to have the cake in your storehouse because you've created it, you're not hindered by the gnome or the troll. Same thing with the cat. The cat gets placed during the day and only moves during the day. But virtually it's the same thing as a troll, but it works during the day. There are other couple of different cards that hopefully I gave you a kind of a rundown of overview what the game is about before. It may be a week, 2 weeks before I finish instructions, and all you have is this poor little card. But it was very useful. So let's go take a look at our art. Here she is. Wow. Look how she's turned out. Oh, wow. Isn't that something? Look at that face. So how this works is that you take... I'll be saving several layers of her. And I don't have time to do that now. This will run for minutes and minutes if I did that. But what I'll do is I'll take several layers and I'll lay them on top of each other and I'll start merging them down. The best parts what will be displayed. Because, you know, if you notice that there are parts of this where she'll have some deformations. And that will all be... so I'll choose the best photo for the backdrop. I'll choose the best photo for the different parts of her. Maybe it's the eyes, the way her mouth is shaped, maybe the expression on her face. And then also some of the elements in the background might not show up in some of the other pictures, and those all get merged together. So really, the artwork for this game was really a collage of adding the layers. And that's also why I like to see every third photograph. It's because I like to see that transformation. Now, let's go all the way back here. This is what's going to blow you away. Here's my drawing. You see her transform into an image that absolutely gorgeous. Of course, you know, you're experimenting with the different artists. You're experimenting with the different mediums, arts, and also, you know, when you're building these, you're also adding in different elements that, like the trees and whatnot, the composition. But the thing is that this art is yours. You can sell it. You can put it in something that gets sold. You know, because this is really, there is no regulation on artificial intelligence art right now. And, you know, until there is any kind of regulation, all this art that you create, you can put your stamp on it and you can sell it or put it in something that you do sell. And it's really phenomenal. This art was working in the background while I was working on different elements of the game, typesetting the cards, and again, a lot of time gets spent just thinking about the game and sketching it out, all the notes that go into it, and you know, there's different elements, and like when in my line of work, I have to have these different elements all working in tandem together. I have to be working on several things at one time to get anything done. But anyway, that was it in a nutshell. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll leave a link in the description of all the different tools that I've used here, and also a link to the game. I hope you enjoy it. And it's free. You can log on there and check it out for yourself.